So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for our second video chat. I'm very excited to have Grant here with me, Grandpa, and Stu Singer. I'm so happy that they've agreed to give up some of their time. I met both of them on my transition from the UK to the US, and I'm not sure whether both of them knew it. Just giving up their time to speak with me was really, really helpful in my transition, especially dealing with this pandemic when things threw everything up in the air. So very grateful for you guys, and thank you as well for being here today, giving up your time. I'm not going to do the introductions. I'm going to let you guys do your introductions. So Stu, if you want to kick off.
Yeah, Stu Singer, sports psychologist, have my own practice that I see individuals from high school through to professional on my own. And then, but my, the core of my work is working with teams, and in particular with the Washington Wizards in the NBA and the Washington Mystics in the WNBA. And just, trying to figure out the world right now and how we're going to continue to do what we do and keep it where it should be, which is in the forefront of how we're going to come out of this. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for that introduction. Grant, if you want to go next.
Yeah. So Grant Parr, I'm a mental performance coach. I provide mental skills training and leadership training to professional athletes, Olympians, collegiate and high school athletes. I also work with a lot of corporations providing mental skills training and leadership training and transition training as well. Been doing my own practice. It's called Game Face Performance, and been doing this for the last 6 years, and I'm having a blast doing it. And just came out with a book last year called The Next One Up Mindset, and created my podcast 90% Mental about 4 years ago. So just having fun, just exercising my creativity with all these different mediums within this awesome field. So I'm really excited.
Okay. So thank you for that positive energy. So that's going to help us go into our next question, where talking about the challenges and the joys. And I found the challenges and joys have been intermingled in this environment we find ourselves in. I'm going to distinguish between what I call the first wave and the second wave. I think when I first spoke with you guys, it was the start of the first wave, and we all thought, no, this is going to finish in 3 months' time. We'll be back to normal. And now it's quite good having this talk where we're now in the second wave, where we don't know when this is going to finish. So it's just to kind of touch on what have been the joys and the challenges for you guys during this period, and how you adapting your mindset to the reality that we're in now. Stu, did you want to jump in to that one?
Yeah. It's funny the way that you framed it, because I remember as we started, and maybe even in our first conversation, there were certainly things that I was concerned about, obviously, about what it would all mean, and how is it going to devastate us, the economy, the world, how, all those things. But I think I also viewed it as this, like pushing the restart button opportunity. And I mean that for myself, but I also mean it probably from a macro sense of the world. And so I'm going to use that as both a challenge and a joy, is that I did find that to be a joy, and I still find it to be a joy. I do think that there are a lot of things that we have learned. I think we have learned that we don't need to be on this outrageously fast merry-go-round of one thing after another and running to one thing after another. I think we have learned that we can do work like this, which, there's some beauty to, because one of the joys for me is that I'm typically on the road, minimum of a few days a week, almost every week, maybe every other week. And I have been like that for maybe a decade. And this has allowed me, I've been home literally every day since the shutdown, which is also,
That's a joy and a challenge as well.
Yes, it is. I mean, absolutely adore my family, and it is the thing that kind of re-energizes me and makes me me. And everything I do is centered there. But it's a challenge because I am used to being on the run, and maybe that leave come back is one of the things that re-energizes us, and also just as much as this is good, and we certainly are showing that we can do it. I do miss being with some of face to face with teams and clients and coaches that I work with. So it's almost like it's intermingled for me. But I think, and we talked about this the other day, the three of us, is that even with the fact that I live out what I try to teach to those that I work with, I certainly have had those days where I just felt like, man, like, are we going to get back to something? Is today different than the day before? Is it quite as meaningful? All the different things that I think any of us, and also the uncertainty of just knowing, like, am I solid with all my work that I'm doing, or, is the economy going to really impact me as well? So I have faced certainly days where that's been a challenge for me. And I'm really thankful that, for years and years and years, I've done the things to proactively strengthen, my mindset, so that I think I've felt pretty good throughout. But those to me are the biggest, kind of joys and challenges along the way for this.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I think, I remember when we first spoke, we did think this was like pushing the restart button. And it has been a huge, huge learning experience for everyone. I think this has never happened before. So there's no one else you can go and ask. You can't go and read about it in any book. Yeah. So, and I love what you said about the merry-go-round. I kind of call it the hamster wheel, where you're just always the next project. And now you just stopped and going, what? Why was I doing that? And it's just like, because everyone else was doing it. So that's been a huge plus. But I loved when you were talking yesterday about, the truth about the joys and the challenges are kind of intermingled. Because I remember when we first spoke, and you were the joy of spending time with your family, and I just had a baby boy, and it was a dream to be able to spend. He's nearly going to be 1 now.
That's beautiful.
To you, the joy and the challenges are very intermingled. So some days you wake up and you, oh, thank you God for this time, and other days are like, when
can I be in a hotel somewhere?
Right.
When is he going away? So it's and what I never thought I'd miss so much is the human contact. I mean,
oh man,
last time we went for a barbecue, it was like the biggest euphoria filling our bodies, and it was crazy. So I didn't realize how much human contact was so essential to us as humans.
Yeah, totally, complete.
And something we're going to come to later on is the point you mentioned about tools and strategies. Like, you've been doing this work, and even with that, we still have these grumpy days, which I have it, you have it, Grant said he has it as well. So just trying to share with everyone our tools and strategies for how we cope with it. Is something we'll come to later. But Grant, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about your joys and challenges.
Yeah, I think, especially, throughout this whole pandemic, but the last couple months, we just live in a fear-based society. And, yes, the media and social media and all these other, mediums out there that are pushing this fear, but it's a trap that people fall into real quick. And so for me, I've been very present on when I'm around people or have conversations, how I'm protecting my energy, and how I'm not getting enrolled into those stories and into that energy. Because that fear can just suck the energy out of you. And right now I need all the energy I can get, just to do my job. So that's been it's been a challenge to, and like we said, I'm human. I've had some shitty days, but it's gotten me back into my breath a lot. Doing tons of more intentional breath work and really actually going back to not listening to all this fear, but talking to it. So putting myself back into power and talking to this, my inner dialogue, and strengthening that relationship that I have. So it's been more, I wouldn't say it's a joy, but it's been kind of cool to see that my awareness is there and I in my work. And I will say another challenge is that since we are doing virtual, like you said, Sonny, like how you've missed being around, that human interaction. Man, do I miss it. And I think we're all doing all virtual work now. And I'll tell you what, I just spoke at a very large company, a global sales summit. I think I did 4 sessions in 2 days and a total of 2,000 salespeople. And the challenge is that I break dance when I'm speaking in front of teams and people, man. I'm moving around. I'm going in and out of the aisles. I'm loving it. But what's happening is that I'm giving out tons of energy, but I'm also getting energy back. And so at the end of last week, man, on Friday, I told my wife, I'm like, I'm done. I'm not doing work. I'm not doing anything. I'm recharging because I was putting so much energy through this computer and nothing was coming back, so that was a challenge. But again, brought awareness on how to take care of my body and to recover and to do self-care and do the right things. So that was a challenge, but I would say a cool joy. And I think who this person is Graham Betchart, who is my mentor. And what we've been doing the last 3 months is creating this music project. So as far as joy, just tapping into my creativity again as a musician. So him and I are creating we call it melodic mantras, but it's meditation music. And, he's doing a lot of spoken word on the music that I'm creating. And, he's inspirational mantras. So it's been really fun to get away from all the noise and create, especially do it with your mentor and your good friend. So that's been one cool joy that's kind of spawned out of the pandemic.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I mean, a lot to go through on your answers. I'm going to start with how fear has been kind of governing everything that we're doing. And I kind of find what you said about protecting your mindset and also being your work. One thing that popped to mind as you were talking was, we all talk about controlling the controllables. I've never found that to be so hard to actually implement during this period. Like actually trying to stop your mind from going down the rabbit hole and just start worrying about all this stuff and all this uncertainty. So I love that point you made about protecting your energy has been a big thing for me, because I kind of think of like an emotional tank, and we normally have things that fill up our energy. And even like for you, be speaking at an event. But when you're live at the event, you're right, you get so much energy when you're going around. And there's nothing worse than trying to do a speaking event into the box.
Right.
I was trying to do a TED talk, and we had to go through kind of the dress rehearsals and different rounds. And I remember when I first did it, it was just so weird. You're talking, and then you're just like, I'm actually just standing in my room here, talking to this computer. Nothing's coming back. So that's something I wanted to touch on. And I loved your point about the creativity, the music project, because where we don't have the human contact, every day I found that's the hardest bit, has been, how am I going to create joy for myself? How am I going to get that energy? So that could be, that could be something we'll talk about our next.
Well, and I would piggyback on that as well, is that, one of the joys for me actually has been, because of gaining time around not being, in travel mode so much. One of the things that I've been able to do is write and create in a way that I haven't been able to do in a while. And, so I totally agree with that. I'm not a musician. Believe me, I'm not a musician. So that's not my creativity. But, being able to write, whether it just be like a blog post, or even write as in creating some programming and some, some new concepts and ideas that I've been working on, it's been phenomenal and exciting, and kind of pairing with some people. That's been super cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Jumping on that, for me, which I found quite strange, was actually doing this. I would never think of doing a video chat series or anything like that. But after after I went on your podcast, and I just found it really energizing and actually reflecting on, like, I think I was talking about the fears I felt before transitioning. So actually coming on doing that, and I kind of was talking to my wife, and she was like, well, why don't you just get on Zoom and just start talking to people? So this has been one of my joys.
Beautiful.
Going forward. So what was I talking about now? How have you guys been adapting to try and keep up with your mental fitness, adapt to your mindset?
Yeah, it's funny because at the beginning, first phase, I actually wrote up something for the family and put it on the refrigerator. It said, these are some things that we should be, pretty aware of. I think we're all each fans of using mindfulness. So I'm a daily mindfulness practitioner, and so I've been really, really diligent. Not that I ever was not, but I've doubled down, let's say, and really have depended on it, relied on it. Staying active, whatever active might mean. It can be anything from a traditional workout to just getting out and walking the dog, but staying active. Being outside, I think being outside is really paramount. Sunlight, sleep routine has been really solid. How we eat has been solid. And when I say we, the whole family's kind of doing it, even my kids have done. I've really been proud of them, and they know they have their responsibilities if they're doing virtual school, that those things have to be done, but also making sure that they're maintaining their bodies, practicing their sports, eating well, sleeping well. Like, don't get caught up in bad ruts, bad habits. And those things have been from day one, I would say, and really have stayed consistent. The one really fortunate thing that we've had is that our next door neighbors also have been quarantining from day one the same exact way and haven't had to go into work. So we've been able, over the course of the quarantine, and they're good friends of ours, to be able to spend time. First, we just spent time outside, and even though it was freezing cold up here in the Northeast, we did that for a while just to be separated, but outside and interacting. And that's been huge. Like, we each talked about the personal interaction and things, and we've been lucky that we've been able to at least do some of those things. And I would say, like, that's been, and then, just diving into the work, and like I said, doing it in a fun, creative, collaboration way with some folks that I haven't been able to collaborate with in the past. And I think all those things combined have been really, really effective. So happy that they've been part of my, way I've approached things for years. But it was nice to be able to see the fruit of it, I guess, paying off in a way that's been different than all the other time that I knew it was paying off, but this is definitely different. And then the really cool part is, and again, we touched on it before, is also recognizing that even though we've been doing all these things, that it still doesn't guarantee that every day is going to be sunshine and roses. And that's okay. Like, that's been good. And so in some of my Zoom sessions that I've done with teams or big groups, acknowledging it's literally normal. It would be abnormal to not have these days. So it's not about not having these days. It's actually about experiencing these days, allowing for ourselves to be okay with the idea that we are going to experience them, but that we have these proactive things that we can be doing daily and that we can depend on and rely on, that should weather the storm and help us to weather the storm.
Yeah, I love that point about I call it grumpy days. And once I made the mental shift to accept that it's normal, that this is going to happen, no matter how much mindfulness you do, how much walking, everything, you're going to have some days where, like, this is just crap. And sooner we were able to accept that and make that mental shift, it's just been okay, because now me and my wife know, okay, you're having a grumpy day, okay, we need to try and do this. I love the points. I call it the 3 M's: movement, meditation, and moments. Like, moments are the big one for me, is planning for joy, because nothing's going to like fill your well up. So you literally have to be creative in what's going to give us joy today. What are the things that you're going to cherish? And I found that, yeah, when we didn't go outside, things just
so relevant, right? It's so relevant.
It's huge.
But weirdly enough, I found I'm really big into mindfulness and meditation. And first, I didn't know whether it's just the fact that I now have a little boy, but I was really struggling to meditate. Instead, I've started doing more informal mindfulness, like when I go for a walk, spending time with him. Because I found that with all the uncertainty going on, staying in your logical brain, or even trying to quieten your logical brain, is just, for me, it's been really tough. So I just find, instead of trying to force yourself to sit down, just any kind of informal practice, go for a walk, sitting by a lake, anything has been really helpful.
Sonny, can I jump in on 2 parts of that? Because I think it's such an important point. So the one point is that it's the recognition, right? I mean, it's a great way for us to understand the needs of our clients better by truly experiencing the idea. It would be like working with an athlete and saying every game is going to work out exactly the way you want it.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
No, it's
It will never be that way. And so instead of that, the acceptance of the challenge, the struggle, the failures, the losses, the setbacks, the injuries, all those things are inherent in competition, and they're inherent in life, essentially. And so we're not shooting for that. We're not shooting for the straight uphill, everything's an easy glide. Not that we don't want those days, of course, but that we there's an acceptance that life has an ebb and flow to it. And that what we're really prepping for is let's really hone in and key in on the days where things are going, that way that we want, appreciate it, love it, everything that we get from it, enjoy, be present to it. And on the days that it's not, accept that there are those days. So let's not panic. Let's know that we do have some systems and some, habits and some exercises that we can use, that we always have been able to use, that we can get better at because of it. And I think it's so powerful for us to understand it from the inside out when we're teaching. And then the second part, I love that idea about intentional moments. I think that's the beauty of mindfulness, obviously, is that we can slow down and be present enough to notice the moments that are still wonderful, even though they could easily slip by if we couldn't slow down enough to be present to it. But the idea of understanding that right now, and I think you said it yesterday, that we don't have all the things that have always typically been the go-tos for us.
Yeah.
Now we have to be a little bit more intentional and intentionally find those moments. And so I love that. I jotted down moments because I feel like that's something that's an additional point to the movement in mindfulness, because it's we do have to be intentional with that. So I apologize, Grant. I'm going in.
No, not a problem.
Go for it.
Thank you for intervening in that. Those are great points. Grant, I wonder if you wanted to go next.
Yeah, we talk about having those grumpy days and those tough moments. I call them the itty bitty shitty committee inside your head, man. When you're going through some of that stuff, right? And it's just bringing awareness to it, like you're saying. And I love how you're bringing up moments, because what happens when we move on from the moment, it turns into a memory. And obviously, would we want to create more, positive memories in our lives? Sure. But if I don't, I want to make sure that I'm learning from that moment, and the only way I'm going to learn from that moment is to be very present. So I think, talking about moments is huge. I think everything that you were talking about, Stu, about all the things that you and your family are staying connected to, it's huge. Because what I've actually, there's a couple of things I've been focusing on with myself and my clients, but is that routine. I mean, especially there's so many athletes and so many people think that this is kind of a vacation, and then it's turning into a very bad vacation, right? So, and you can develop bad habits. And for me, I wake up at 5 a.m, and Monday through Friday, it's just Monday through, that's what I do. And am I tempted sometimes just to sleep in? Yeah. But it's like, I can't fall in that trap. So I've had to remind myself and build awareness of that, like my routine and my habits during this time is crucial. And it's kind of speaking to what Stu was saying, but with myself and my clients, my message is to stay connected with your craft, stay connected to what makes you feel joy, and also connect with people that are going to feed you the energy that you need, and then also give it back. Because again, we go back to the whole fear-based thinking, and there's a lot of fear around us. So if you're truly taking care of you and fulfilling that responsibility of honing on your craft and then feeding the people that feed you, I think we're going to weather the storm, but you're going to come out on top. And so it's about staying connected. And that's what Stu was saying. That's what I got from it, is just staying connected to all the things that are going to allow you to be productive and to build some resiliency through all this. It's hard to build resiliency if you don't have a process in place and staying connected to it.
Mm-hmm. I love the point that you made about the itty bitty shitty committee. And I love what you said about, I never even thought about that, being intentional about the moments, but actually learning from them. Because if you learn from them, you almost like put this thing in your mind to remember how much that, you cherish that. And then I think I'm going back to something Stu said, was like all the work that we've been doing is kind of preparing us for when we have those grumpy days. And that's what I found in my family. Never so much I always work on myself and on my wife, but helping each other through those grumpy days has been, that's been the real test of, does this work? So it's like, before you can go and start doing it with your clients, everything is like, you can read it in the book, but until you practice it in real life, and there's no more better than in your family life doing that.
Yeah,
for sure. And I will say this real quick, is to go back to staying connected to your craft. This whole moment, what we're experiencing with the pandemic can feel like we're in the dark because we're isolated. So for athletes, performers, or anybody out there, this is the moment where you do all the hard work in the dark so you can shine the light. I know that's kind of cliche, but there's going to be a moment where we're going to perform again. We're going to get back to the new normal. So this is where you actually do all that hard work. So when it's time for you to do your thing, you're going to shine. So it's some of the things I've been preaching to my clients.
Yeah, I love that point. Stay connected to your craft and doing work in the dark, you mentioned, because there's one of my clients where I've been working with now for many, many years, and he actually ended up helping me through this because he started to remind me of all the stuff I told him about mindfulness. But what I loved is the way he made the mental shift so quickly. Like, Olympics got cancelled, I'm not going to compete. But he just kept ticking over every day, ticking over. And then when he couldn't tick over, he was quite happy to just relax. Because it's like, whenever this, basically the control was, whenever this comes out, when we come out of this, I'm going to be ready to perform. And watching him it did remind me of, forget, even if you don't have a performance in mind, just keep doing the work in the dark, because it will pay off when it comes time. Which actually leads me to, if we can talk about techniques and strategies we can share with people. I think, Stu, I remember when you were talking about you've got your kids at home and getting them to just keep doing a bit of work to keep up with their sports. And I know for the younger people, it's really hard to train when you're like, what am I training for? What? Right. So I thought that would be a good one of touching on how have you helped them to stay the course and keep doing some work.
Yeah, it's funny because I've said that my kids are extremely aware of what I do, and they are youth athletes, but they ultimately see me as dad, and they don't want to hear about anything when it applies to them for their sports. Right. Saying that, I have to say that, again, the whole proactive piece of this, it was an amazingly cool, and I'm just an observer really of like, how's this going to play out, and watching them really never, there was not some massive downturn. There was really, okay, I mean, everything really stayed consistent. And somewhere, I believe that they must have listened somewhere along. Maybe it's my wife. It's probably with my wife's influence. I shouldn't take any credit. But I do believe that. And it was around these ideas of routines and figuring out, well, what do we have some control over? You know, as the weather got better, you know, saying to my daughter, like, set up your, you know, school virtual outside and be in the sunlight, you know, and because that mattered to her in particular. And, you know, we have a pretty decent workout area in the basement. So, you know, my son was like, from day one, okay, you know, I can get my schoolwork done by a certain time, and then I can get an hour workout in every day if I want. And so doing that, and, you know, and actually each of them exploring some things that I think were also the creative side, you know, like, because we're all on the merry-go-round, and often it's because our kids are on the merry-go-round, at least for me. You know, they didn't have that part, and all of a sudden started to read things they probably hadn't, you know, been reading about before, and watching videos about, and just trying to learning and becoming interested in additional things. And I think it's good for all of us. These are all things that I think are good for all of us, but it was cool to watch that. So, you know, if there are parents here or people that do the work that we do, but are doing parent sessions, I really do think, you know, mindfulness, and it sounds like for each of us, is just like this grounding center of everything that we do, understanding how important it is to stay present and try to get out of that judgmental mind. And I just, you know, I just believe so strongly in it. So if people aren't doing it, start now, right? You have time. There's nobody can tell me they don't have time right now. So start now. And set your routines and understand, you know, Grant, you said 5, I'm 5:30, and I've stayed pretty true to that. Never did I could sleep in today, because I do my mindfulness in the morning during the stillness. And so I'm not going to break that. That's good stuff. And so don't break the things that work. And we've all mentioned the outsides, the controllables, you know, how important movement is, and all those things are the skills, but it's really, to me, in the application, right? So it's less about, do we know what's good for us? I think at this point, there's enough articles written at this point about this stuff. It's really about saying, let's apply it. Let's really go for it. And if mindfulness feels weird for me the first time I do it, so what? Do it again tomorrow. And if you can't do 10 minutes, do 2 minutes. But start applying these things and allowing them to actually appear, right? So sometimes we do them and we want this immediate whatever, and it's just like exercise and wanting to lose weight. It doesn't work that way. It's about the staying on it and doing it over a period of time, but not, you know, one great workout is awesome. Right. But if you want to lose 10 pounds, it's probably not going to happen. So, you know, it's about the consistency and the application. Right. So the building of the habit without, on the other hand, getting super angry at ourselves when, you know, maybe we slip up for a day. So what? Move on to the next day. And to me, we've discussed a million of the good things to do, but really it's that idea of saying it's time to apply these things. And if we can't do them for hours at a time, do them for minutes at a time, and we can always build from there. But try to make these habits daily, and then you'll see that the bonus or the byproduct of the benefit of it just starts to kind of appear from the repetition.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of times I've heard when I try to push mindfulness on people, like, I haven't got enough time. And it's like, that answer is not going to wash anymore, because you've definitely got more time
exactly.
than ever before. But I do love because there's so much out there on social media of what to do. It's not just about reading and knowing it in theory, it's literally applying it. And something you just said about also being kind to yourself, like, so routines. I used to always be the person who wake up early in the morning, but I just had my first kid, and I just realized that my wife had to tell me several times of learning to be fluid and flexible. And I've learned it this year, of where some routines, like, don't hang on to it so hard. Like, you may fall off a bit, but as long as you keep working to get back on it. So I always had the one of making sure I do some exercise, making sure I get outside. But the sleep one, I've kind of worked out that I just have to go with the flow. Like, whenever the king tells me it's time to wake up, I have to wake up. But I love learning to be kind to yourself and just being consistent. Like, I knew it was something I had in my mind that I want to get back to getting up early. So whenever I keep trying to aim for it and being consistent, but making sure that those 3 M's never, like, always make sure we go out for a walk, like non-negotiables. We've got to go out for a walk, doesn't matter how tired we are or sleep deprived. It's been really helpful. So, Grant, yeah, did you want to go next?
Yeah. You know, we talk about mindfulness. It's the law of two easies. It's easy to do and it's easy not to do. Because on paper, I mean, it's really easy work. It's just doing it and doing it a little bit each day. And it's just repping it out. Just whatever you're good at, you just didn't wake up and when you're good at it, you repped it out. And this is what mindfulness is. You have to rep out your breath. You have to rep out your intentionality. You just have to rep this stuff out. And, you know, for me, as far as some of the things I've been doing from a mental fitness standpoint through this time, there's so much to mindfulness. There's so many different breathing techniques and meditations and different things to look at and build awareness around. But, you know, I've always heard and known about mindfulness walking. I do transitional breathing in the house where sometimes when I go to one room to the next, that's when I'm focusing, dropping into my breath. So sometimes when I'm really active around the house, I'm doing a lot of breath work because I'm going into all these different rooms. But my wife and I been listening to a ton of podcasts because we have more time, right? and we were listening to this podcast and it was talking about mindfulness walking. So it's been interesting because we live in San Francisco, which now it used to be a really busy city, but it's pretty quiet these days because everyone's moving out. But we're doing more mindfulness walking, and it's crazy because the first time we did it together, when we got done, we walked for about 35 minutes, and we got back, and she's like, "So what'd you experience?" And my whole experience was external, and her experience was all internal. So she was focusing on how her body felt with each step, how her breath was feeling, where was she getting her breath from, the tension in her neck, all that stuff, where I was like hearing stuff, seeing stuff. And I was kind of dropping into the sound of my footsteps because I was like, you know, I've had a bad leg for years from football. So I drag it sometimes like lazy. So I've kind of felt that and heard that. I'm like, wow, never thought of that. So, but it was really interesting to kind of compare our experiences. And because of that, now I live in a house in San Francisco that was built in 1900. So it's a little old and crickety. Now that I had that experience and do mindfulness walking, my house is so loud when I walk on it. Like, I didn't realize that. But now I'm like, every time I'm walking on the wood floor, it's just creaking. And I'm like, wow, I never paid attention to it. But it was those walks that have brought some awareness around it.
I love that one. Yeah. Kind of what you just said is kind of remind me of how with the time that we've had, we've now been more stretchy mindset. We're trying different things. I think like with your mindfulness practice, you've taken it to a different level and experimenting. And the stretchy mindset for me is kind of helping with the creativity side, where I focus in on, like, for instance, if I go for a walk with my kid, I try and focus in on the different things he sees. It's the same walk, but it's kind of looking at it from a different perspective each day, instead of just thinking, I need to just walk 30 minutes there and back. So right. It's in a bit with your mindfulness walking. So I think we kind of covered all the topics I wanted to touch on. This has been amazing. Thank you so much, guys, for giving your time and the energy. I always like to finish off with, what's one thing you'd like to share with the world to help with their mental fitness? So I don't know who wants to go first on this one.
Yeah, I don't. I don't know if it's something new, but I really do feel like the idea of there's a surrendering quality to accepting that where we are right now is where we are, and that we can want things to be either in the future better or go back to what once was, and if we do that, there's going to be suffering. And so there's a surrendering quality to saying this is the lay of the land right now, and then the idea of, okay, so on the days where this is a struggle, this is difficult, I'm all right. Like, it's okay that I'm not perfect, or I don't feel exactly the way I would like to. And then be creative with the things that we've talked about. Really tap into them. And, Grant, you mentioned different forms of mindfulness. One of the things that I've added, because I also wanted to kind of go a little bit more deeper with it while, being able to have a little bit extra time, was then writing right after for 10 minutes. Sometimes it was 100% about whatever the guided meditation happened to be that morning, or sometimes it's my own thoughts that are, just there. And I found that to be really cool. So, like, experiment, but use these things. And for me, the last piece of this was just for all of us to remember practicing of gratitude throughout, even though we can acknowledge that things aren't always perfect and wonderful. The reality is here we are. Clearly, we're still healthy, talking about our families, still working. So ultimately, while it's different and days might be, the grumpy days might pop up, ultimately we have nothing, to really be truly devastated by, and to be grateful, and to practice acknowledging, intentionally acknowledging that gratefulness is massive.
I love the gratefulness. I think the gratitude is so important if you want to deal with the grumpy days, and acceptance. That's the only way for me to kind of really ground myself, is when you just kind of take into consideration how the things you do actually have. So I really like that.
Yeah, totally.
Actually, Grant, which I forgot to mention, this was when you mentioned the breathing. And more now than ever, I've never realized how important. I always knew breathing was important from the mindfulness, but that's been the part I've really been focused on in my practice. And I've really, just the awareness it brings to you when different situations are happening. And I've been practicing. So I don't know if you guys have heard of Wim Hof, does the breathing technique. So I started practicing it, and it was strange. We put our son into daycare, and by doing the breathing practice, I kind of noticed the fear that I had of, is he going to be all right? Are we doing the right thing? And I went for a walk, did the breathing practice, and kind of got in tune with that fear of, wow, we're really going to do this. And it helped me where I got to the next day. I could then feel as the fear was building up, and I kept doing the breathing. And then as I got there, unfortunately, my wife didn't do the breathing with me. So it was a bit shocking for her when we actually had to, leave our son there. But it really, I wouldn't have got through that experience without the breathing practice. No way. I would have just been mindless. I would have turned up, and then all of a sudden the fear would have come up in some other shape or form. So I thought I'd touch on that from the thing you just said before.
Beautiful. That's great.
Yeah, if there's the one thing that you'd like to share, Grant?
Yeah, it's a question. It's not an external question, but it's more of an internal question that you're asking yourself through this time. And it's, what do you want to be known for during this time? Like, what do you want to be known for yourself? It's not about like other people, but when you can look back at this and we get back to the new normal, whatever that looks like, do you want to look back at that experience that you were stressed out, full of fear and worry and doubt, and you were creating all these stories? Or are you that person that is going to look at a crisis as an opportunity? You're going to come from optimism. And it's not going to be perfect, But I think that question I've asked myself and I've asked some of my clients. So who do you want to be known for? What's it going to look like? What do you want it to look like? Instead of being in the effect of all this stuff around us. So that'd be one question that I would throw out there to people to think about is like, what do you want to be known for through this pandemic?
Okay. I love that. All right, with that note, guys, thank you very much. I'm going to end it here. Thank you for your time and sharing your insights with us. I hope you guys have a good day.
Thank you so much for having us, Sonny. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Sonny.
All right.
Talk soon.
All right.
Take care.